So welcome back to Orkney, me and Monty, a little bit of a different setting. So I went to Everything Electric North down at Harrogate on the 25th of May, and one of the many sessions was Ask the Experts, how do I choose an electric vehicle? And this was with Jack Scarlett, and the other panellist was EV Nick, Paul from the Green Car Guide, and a guy called Will from Tesla Jigsaw. I'll put a link to their YouTube channels or their websites in the description below. But basically, it was a nice informal chat. Hope you enjoy it. It was filmed by my good friend Chris, Plugged In Adventures, and thanks to Chris for doing the filming. Hope you enjoy it.
Good. This is going well so far. Let's go down the line, Jonathan. Just quickly introduce ourselves then.
Jonathan Porterfield, used to run a business called 𝐂�𝐒. I've since retired. Based on Orkney, love doing YouTube videos about driving absolutely anywhere in an EV.
Jonathan, by the way, echoing a sentiment I've heard many a time this weekend, which goes, North?
It's not North.
Everything electric North? I'm sorry, I know. I'm from London. If it's above Milton Keynes, it's North as far as I'm concerned. Will?
Hello, I'm Will. I'm an accidental Tesla addict, so I bought a Tesla 5 years ago. I had no idea how much I was going to fall in love with it, to the point where I now run a YouTube channel where I basically just geek out on Tesla and I follow the story. I find it quite fascinating as the company that seems to be doing the most to transition the world to sustainable energy. I find the whole thing exciting with Optimus robots and robo-taxis of the future. I just like spreading the positive news and try and fight the foot on my YouTube channel. That's me.
I'm Nicholas Ramo. I'm a used car dealer as well as a YouTuber. So I make videos on electric cars, solar, everything renewable. But I also sell cars. It's not just EVs, all cars in general, in my day-to-day business. And unfortunately, Jack did say 5-hour talk, and he has got 2 used car salespeople up here, so that is quite possible.
Committed now, haven't I, right? Seatbelts on. Paul.
Hi, Paul Clark from Green Car Guide. So my job is, I guess, similar to Jack's, which is to review every EV on sale. Jack does the videos, I do the writing. So after the chat, if you want to come and chat about any stuff about EVs that I can't say on stage, come and see me after that. And my day job is basically communicating about electric vehicles in the industry.
Guys, thank you all for being here. We've got a great spread. We've got new cars, we've got used cars, we've got Tesla-specific specialists, we've got the whole spectrum. Don't be shy. If you have a question, microphone's there, but I'll get us started. Paul, let's begin at the beginning. What are some standout pros, or maybe some overlooked pros, of making the switch to electric? What are some things that surprise people when they first get into an electric car and live with one?
So, the thing I've got to start with, obviously, most people here are probably well aware of lots of negative press about EVs. One thing that's really forgotten, that EVs don't have any tailpipe emissions. So, big picture stuff, climate change and air quality, which seems to be completely forgotten about. The main benefit of EVs to me is no tailpipe emissions, so they're not impacting on climate change or local air quality, which is pollution that kills us. So in terms of the main thing that there's a whole load of benefits, so we probably do need 5 hours really to talk about all the benefits, but obviously the main thing is when people get in an electric car after driving a petrol car, it's instant responses and obviously quiet and refined. So most petrol cars and diesel cars have got some form of turbo lag. So with an electric car, you just get instant responses from the moment you put your foot on the accelerator. And the big thing that's happening now, for years and years, it's been super quiet, hasn't it? Electric cars have been super quiet. But what is happening now with the Ioniq 5N and the Smart Brabus, people are actually putting noise. So those 2 cars actually give you the responses of an electric car, but give you the noise of a petrol car for any petrol heads there. Beyond that, I could just carry on, but perhaps I should pass on down the line.
I'll let someone else have a go, but just to pick up on something you said there, Paul, no tailpipe emissions, very good news. I think the other overlooked factor in terms of how electric cars are greener than their ICE counterparts is that, it sounds obvious, you don't have to put petrol in them. And what people forget is the journey that petrol has been on from a big hole in the ground the other side of the world into your fuel tank, and the amount of pollution that has happened in order to get it there That is the reason they're so much greener, right?
Sorry, just to finish up on that, it's really interesting. So, without getting very techy, basically some work I'm doing is looking at the real-life tailpipe, real-life whole-life emissions of fuel in EVs versus petrol cars. So, an EV is something, I can't remember now, if you take the fuel into account, in terms of taking the fuel out of the ground and into a car, it's probably around, I think it's about 80 grams per kilometre of CO2 emissions, and it's 283 for a petrol car. So it shows that petrol cars are massively more, higher emissions. But with the EVs, what you can do is reduce that massively from that figure by things like smart charging. So it is, you're not just making that up, Jack isn't making it up, it is scientifically proven that electric cars, even with the electricity they use, are much lower emission.
It's also worth noting that if you've got friends who are Daily Mail readers and don't believe in climate change, back to the air quality thing, you can leave an EV parked inside your garage and leave it running for hours and it won't kill you, but if you do that to a petrol car, you can see the sign straight away. And any people who are climate changers who want to deny that, I just think Darwin could help there.
Good Lord, it's like 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, Nick.
I've got a 2-year-old, I've been up since 6.
He's over-caffeinated and it's almost lunchtime for him. Let's just rattle through a few more little pros then. I'd like to hear some maybe less obvious ones, Jonathan, because we know they're cleaner, we know they're fast, but what are some things that people are surprised by when they first get into an EV?
I think the ability to pick how much, everyone wants to know how much it's going to cost to run. Is it, again, not quoting the Daily Mail, but you'll see headlines that rapid chargers cost £1 a kilowatt and it's now cheaper to run a diesel. It's rubbish. Basically, you've got more choice with an EV. You can either charge it from solar, or if you've got a wind turbine at home, which many of people on Orkney have, or you've got a cheap tariff. So you've got so much choice as to how much you want to pay. And once people get that into their heads, it's just a no-brainer because it's so much cheaper to run than a fossil fuel car.
Yeah, I'd just certainly echo that. For anyone who's thinking about getting an electric car, the thing that blew my mind the most was, over the first 4 years of owning my Tesla Model 3, I worked out that I'd saved £12,500 in fuel costs because I'm lucky enough to have a driveway and I'm geeky enough to get on a very cheap overnight tariff. So originally I was paying just 4p per kilowatt hour every night. I mean, now it's an atrocious 7p instead. But it's still, the equivalent of, I think it's about £3 will give me 200 miles of range, is what I've been used to now for 5 years. And when you factor in, there's no servicing, there's no maintenance on an electric car. Despite you might see BYD doing a tremendous offer where they offer 2 years of free servicing with a new BYD. I find that a little bit strange because there's not much to do, is there?
Yeah, it's like sort of throwing in free oil changes, isn't it? My Polestar had its first service at 2 years old the other day, and it's one of those garages where they send you a video of them like sort of rounding up what they found. It was literally a video of this guy being like, "Tyres good. See you in 2 years." That's it. Kick the tyres.
I've had a few arguments with MOTs as well. It was like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I've had customers say to me when they buy a used EV, and they go, what's the service schedule? So it depends if it's a 1 year or 2 year service. But what's the difference? So a 1 year service, you just kick the tyres once. 2 year service, we kick them twice.
I think the lack of maintenance is a real standout highlight for me. Admittedly, the Polestar I drive is the first new car I've owned. Before that, it was an 18-year-old Golf, and every time it went into a garage, I was like, oh God, I was so nervous about what they were going to come back with and just how much it was going to hurt my wallet. But it's wonderful just having that kind of peace of mind that it's extremely unlikely the car's going to come throw any big bills at you unexpectedly.
Yeah, I mean, I would still advise that you take it into a dealer though, or an independent to have it checked, because although it might not need as much service, things can still break, and if they do happen within the warranty period, the earlier you spot them, the better, because you can get them repaired. But many manufacturers can refuse to pay out on warranty claims if the car's not been serviced, even though technically they don't do anything.
Good little note there. And actually, at this point, Jonathan, we should acknowledge the fact that maybe, due to their lesser maintenance requirements, electric cars make better second-hand purchases, or safer second-hand purchases than their ICE counterparts too. Would you agree?
Yeah, because you haven't got things like the clutch to worry about, and whether it's had a cam belt changed. So like you've said, the servicing is is minimal, but from a safety point of view, you still want to make sure the brakes are okay, the brake lines are okay. So it's good to have at least once a year an inspection. And of course, if it's over 3 years old, it's going to have an MOT anyway. So I always say a service is a bit like an MOT check, and they'll possibly top up your screen wash and perhaps put a pollen filter into the car so it smells nice. That's basically it on any EV.
It is worth noting though, they still can go wrong, and when they do go wrong, they usually are expensive to fix because there's very few specialists that can repair them, and the bits that do go on them, some manufacturers have been very naughty. They used to sell the individual component parts so you could repair it in independent, and now they've suddenly stopped selling those individual parts. Jonathan, you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you, right now?
Sorry, say again, Nick.
Your car's gone wrong and it can't be repaired because the manufacturer I won't name don't sell the very cheap part that used to say cost 50 quid, and now they want to sell you the whole unit. It's about 1,000 quid, isn't it?
Yeah, so me and Nick have this thing about the Zoe and the Leaf. I've always been a fan of the Leaf, and Nick's always been a fan of the Zoe. So it's true, certain French manufacturers can be quite naughty. So my Zoe at the moment is in my 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒, they're called 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒 garage, which is an independent chain of repairers who talk to each other. So the line with a lot of mainstream manufacturers is something like the onboard inverter doesn't work, then a manufacturer will say replace the whole inverter. And then an independent garage like that's 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒 associated, they'll find out it's a 50p capacitor deep within the inverter. Now they might charge you obviously several £100s to get to that capacitor, but they'll repair that capacitor and put it back together and have you back on the road, as opposed to the franchise dealer that will just say it's going to cost you £4 to put it right when it's just a 50p. So that's a well-documented case with 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒. If you Google 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒, there are a group of garages that Nick and I have both used in the past that are a good way of getting around the manufacturer that wants to fleece customers.
Yeah, and my advice would be if you're going to buy a used one that's out of manufacturer's warranty, might be worth just looking at an extended warranty from a third party, or if you're buying it from a trusted garage, ask about having an extended warranty on, because they are relatively still used. There's not that many repair garages still, so maybe find your local repair 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒 garage. If it's basic stuff, springs, tyres, brakes, any garage can do that. It doesn't have to be a specialist. It's only a specialist if it's one of the edge cases where it goes wrong. Again, it's edge case if it goes wrong, but if you're that one person that gets a repair that's 1,000 quid, you'll be glad that you put a warranty on that might have cost you 300 quid.
It is rare. Don't think that every other EV goes wrong. It is a rare event, but we're just covering the basics.
I appreciate you guys clarifying that, because it is a rare event. You guys deal with a lot of the dodgy ones because that's part of your job, because you see more of them than most, but generally speaking, you're real unlucky.
And I did tell Jonathan not to buy the Renault Zoe he was buying. I specifically told him 4 times, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't buy that one. It's done 100,000. Don't buy it, Jonathan.
So I bought a 3-year-old Zoe with 110,000 miles from auction on the south coast in Shoreham, drove it all the way back to Orkney, faultless. But a couple of 3 weeks ago, it just suddenly died. I think it's the 12-volt battery, which is still the Achilles heel of all EVs, except Tesla, which have gone for the lithium-ion 12-volt small batteries. But the 12-volt battery in all EVs are just the old-fashioned lead-acid batteries, which will have a shelf life of around 3 years. Would you say about 3 years now? And if that goes down, even though you've got a full traction battery, 60, 70 kilowatt, the car will not start if this little 12-volt PD battery is dead. So 12-volt battery is the Achilles heel. 90% of the time, if there's a fault, it's the 12-volt battery, which is an easy fix.
Cheaper to replace, that's kind of a relief. Okay, let's get really specific about choosing your first electric car. That's what we're here to do today, Will. One of my first pieces of advice that I give people who are starting from scratch is take all your brand loyalty, take everything you think you know from the ICE days about which brands are good and which are bad, and throw it in the bin. Do you agree, and why?
Well, yeah, because Legacy Autos has just not kept up with electrification in the slightest, in my humble opinion. So, you've got a plethora of new electric car manufacturers which are offering, very reasonable, nice electric cars nowadays. My advice would be just to weigh them all up, just to have a, get really geeky and write down your list of favourite cars, and then just weigh up the specs. So see how much range they all do. Obviously, the Perhaps the battery warranty as well. If you're going to get a second-hand car, then I would suggest that you get one that's as lower mileage as you can in order to have a nice warranty for the battery. And the specification of it as well. So, it's really important to test drive all sort of manner of electric cars, see how you get on with it, because they are not all built as equal. So you might notice things like the software inside is an absolute pain to use in some, and it might be just dandy in other ones. So there's lots to consider, and the more effort you put into researching different electric cars, I think that's going to really sort of pay off.
Paul, people might have anxiety about buying their first electric car from, I'm making it up, a Chinese brand that they hadn't heard of 2 years ago. But actually anyone who's driven a new BYD product will confirm that you sort of need to have a go at one before making your mind up, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few Chinese manufacturers around, and there's Chinese brands, but there's also European brands with Chinese components and developments and powertrains inside. An example I would give, and I hope there's no Mercedes dealers here. The last couple of weeks I've had 2 cars that Jack would love. Massive 7-seat SUVs, your favourite type of car, right? So a Mercedes EQS SUV, people love the Mercedes badge. Loads of people buy the Mercedes cars because of the badge. £150,000 for an electric 4-wheel drive 7-seat SUV. This week, rear-wheel drive Kia EV9, £65,000. Still not cheap, but less than half the price. The Kia is a much better car. I have driven from South Manchester down to Millbrook, which is Bedford to here back to South Manchester. It will do it all on one charge, no problem at all. Just the infotainment system, in other words, the interior is really good on the Kia, whereas on the Mercedes, it is just so overwhelming. And it's got one of these screens that goes all the way across. It's £6,000 just for the screen. So hopefully that answers the question. People would think, great, I want a Mercedes badge in my drive. Please don't. Please go for something like a Kia. And obviously BYD Seal, again, very, very good car. And there's a whole load, mentioned before, most underrated car at the moment maybe, Smart 3, #3. Brabus version, it's literally like a mini rally car, like the Hyundai, the Ioniq 5N. So there's loads of cars out there that you might not think of that are really, really good cars. But if you just stick to the brand you've always had, then you're going to miss out on those.
So can I just very briefly talk about used? So at Woodbury, Yorkshire, the Volkswagen 𝐸 is a cracking little EV, and people love the Volkswagen badge. But a far better buy is the Skoda Citigo and the Seat Mii. Same car, just a different badge, but they're identical underneath. But used, and Nick will verify this, used, the Volkswagen would be around £2,000 more than the Seat and the Skoda equivalent. So just go for the Skoda or the Seat because it's the same car. So don't be a badge snob.
I love those cars. Just lovely little squishy, comfortable, spacious, efficient, simple, affordable, beautiful. I completely agree with you, by the way. EV9 over EQS SUV all day long. I was really frustrated by that big Merc. Whereas the EV9, I like a big car if it justifies being a big car. And that thing it's like a TARDIS. It's massive inside. So that makes sense. If you need a lot of space, you need a big car. That's the one for me. I'm conscious, aside from the used stuff, where there are some great deals to be done, we've touched on mostly some fairly expensive new cars. And of course, that is an accusation that's levelled at EVs and EV evangelists. They're too expensive for most people. So let's talk about new, cheaper stuff that's on the way, because I know of some really exciting, affordable new electric cars on the way. Nick, do you?
Yes, the new Dacia, 15 grand. It's going to have a 28 kilowatt hour battery, is that right, from memory? And I think it's got 140 mile range. I'm pulling off my head here, so didn't really research.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but I mean that's going to be £15,000 new. So it's going to be a cheap car. I don't think it's going to be very cheap if you're going to be PCP or PCH in it, because you need a very high residual value, and a 15 grand car is not going to have a very high residual value. But if you're a cash buyer, it's going to be cheap. If you are going to be a PCP, PCH buyer, then pretty much most EVs are quite cheap these days. There's EV deals at the moment that are cheaper than their petrol equivalent car. So, you know, have a look around on PCH. If you can get salary sacrifice, then have a look at salary sacrifice schemes. Just bring EVs right down. Then because it comes out of your wage before you pay any tax. So you're also reducing your tax liabilities when you pay.
So don't buy 15 grand on a date. I'm going to disagree with Nick with the first time. Get a used Kia e-Niro, 64 kilowatt hour, genuine 280, 300 mile range, 7-year warranty, buy it at 3.5, 4 years old, £15,000. Cracking car.
Can I give a shout out to the Tesla Model 3 as well, which my own Tesla Model 3 is probably worth about £16,000 nowadays. I've had it for 5 years. But, you know, over a 200 mile range car, 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds. It's such a incredible value to get a Tesla, obviously supercharging network, blah blah blah. You probably all know about that. Maybe not, I don't know.
Can I just say, it makes me very happy that this panel about choosing your first electric car has sort of turned into a panel about used electric cars, because we can talk about used electric cars now. 2 years ago, we'd do panels on used EVs, and the answer was there are none, and they cost about as much as new ones. Whereas we really are seeing like a blossoming used electric car market, some really good deals out there, which is heartwarming stuff.
It's worth noting that deals new and used this year and next year are going to be the best they've ever been, because you've got the ZEV mandate target that's in this year. Manufacturers, all OEMs, have to sell a set percentage of EVs every year, and there's some manufacturers, Ford, who are miles behind, and they're going to have to do some huge discounts on their offering, huge discounts.
I think they spend all their money on their trailer. That's the problem.
I've only just arrived, but yeah, I expect that the Ford Explorer and the Ford Mustang are going to have some really keen. They're more than likely trying to get rid of most of them through salary sacrifice deals first. Then they'll try and get rid of them through Motability, and then the public deals will start if they're still not to target. But imagine if you're after a Ford Mustang or Ford Explorer and you're not salary sacrificing, you're not going to be leasing it, you're possibly buying it, wait till probably, I'd say, till next year, because that's when they're really going to be struggling for ZEV mandate.
This is cracking advice, and by the way, I'm driving the Ford Explorer in a couple of weeks' time, so you'll see it on the channel. I'll let you know if it's any good. Guys, you have 7 minutes to ask the geekiest 5 people you've ever met any very specific question that you have. Do not miss this opportunity. Hello, sir, nice t-shirt.
Hi, thanks. In the next, like, say, I don't know, 5-6 years, do you think there's going to be a massive decrease in price of electric vehicle manufacturers?
Yep.
Because the way I see it at the moment is Toro is moderate, but all the EVs are very expensive, about 30 to 60 grand. I can't afford that. I'd like to buy brand new. Buying second-hand is an option, but they're still very expensive. So do you think they're going to come down to the 20 grand mark?
Can I just, I'll just briefly say, like, for new cars, it's amazing the deals you can get nowadays. So I test drove an Aura Cat. It's not a cat anymore, is it?
It's a funky cat, I'll have you know.
Yeah, one of the, £200 a month you can PCP that thing, and it's with a sizable deposit, I suppose, £6 grand deposit.
I think what was it, the 𝐂𝐿 yesterday?
Yeah.
It was like 45 grand with the new model.
Not cheap, right?
It's not cheap. It was an amazing car. It's definitely a car I'd like to own, but I would never.
Buy used. Buy used. I've got your warranty.
I've got a used Kona coming in stock. It's 3 years old. It's done 17,000 miles, and it's going to be for sale for about 18 grand.
Go on, offer him 15.
So that's the shape before this new facelift, but you can get an e-Niro that's a similar size to the new Kona, and they're about 18, 19 grand. If your budget is between 15 and 25 grand, you can pretty much buy any EV you want used.
He's
New,
right.
they're going to be plummeting because of that ZEV mandate thing I spoke about.
I'll just add to that. As far as new affordable EVs, the answer is yes. There's going to be more and more, and they're going to get cheaper and cheaper. The reason for that, one word, China. The Chinese brands are coming over here and they're bringing really good, increasingly cheap electric cars, and all the European brands are going, Christ, we're going to have to match that, and they have no choice but to. Absolutely. So this year, new Dacia Spring, 15 grand. New Citroen EC3, about 22,000. That's 22,000 euros, 99 euro a month lease on the continent. So I guess it'll be equivalent here. And it's just going to go down from there. So it's a really exciting time in terms of getting some entry-level affordable EVs. About time, right? Yeah.
It's worth mentioning as well for the people that are in the market for a second-hand used EV, and you've got £5,000-7,000 or something like that. If you've got a second car as a runabout that you have a driveway at home, you can just plug in. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. And I've got friends that are still despite they've driven my Tesla and they're full in, they want an electric car, but they just can't perhaps, afford the leap to a new one. They could easily just go out and buy a BMW i3 for, I think, what, £7,000-8,000 now or something, as a runaround for their second car. And it would just be absolute magic for them. But then, I've got friends that are still waiting for a 600-mile range, £20,000 car, so they continually drive diesels. It's so frustrating where if the opportunity is there to get a second-hand one.
I was going to, at some point during the session, ask all of you my favourite annoying question. I'll do it quickly now for Paul. Paul, how much range is enough range?
I think, when you asked me this last time, I gave you a very precise answer, which is 300 miles, because that's what most people ask me or tell me that they want out of an electric car when they're swapping for a petrol car. But obviously, it really doesn't matter at all. I mean, a Mercedes EQS now does 481 mile range, so almost 500 miles. But loads of people I know survive with a Renault Zoe that, one of the first Zoes that does 80 miles in real life, and they're absolutely happy with that. So obviously it completely depends on the range that, you need to drive. And so I just wanted to add on the affordability thing. So 90% of new EVs are not bought with cash, they're bought on finance in some way. And obviously salary sacrifice, you mentioned before, is the big thing. You can now do salary sacrifice on used EVs, on second-hand EVs. So there's a whole load of ways to make that big price, much lower. And as I said before, it's the depreciation that makes the big difference. So don't necessarily look at the £60,000, £80,000 sticker price. Some of those, loads of people are driving around in £80,000 UEVs for a few £100s a month. So if you're an employee, go to your companies and get them to take out a salary sacrifice scheme.
Every Taycan you've ever seen on the road is owned by a small business owner who's paying 5 pence a month for it. Good for them.
I'd say your ideal range is anyone a truck driver? Put your hand up. No, so no one's willing to pee in a bottle, so it's less than 600 miles. My range is about 147, because that's literally how long my bladder will last until I need the toilet.
Yeah, bladder range, not to be overlooked.
My bladder range is about 100.
Alright, let's move on.
I'm a lot older, my bladder range is about 80 miles. About an hour and a half, then I have to stop.
Quick, ask a question.
Okay, we think of this. Is there a bargain to be had buying a brand new Fisker Ocean, now available at half the manufacturer's retail price?
Bloody hell.
I saw 8, I think Nick might have seen them at British car auctions about a couple of weeks ago, and none of them sold, and they seem to be reappearing. I'm not brave enough, Nick, are you, to buy something that's got dodgy software from the off, and from a company that might not exist in the next 10 minutes.
He's probably the only person who's driven it, so have you driven it?
Interestingly, I have genuinely reviewed every EV, and guess what's happened with the Fisker Ocean? They're going, not sure what's going on with that at the moment. We'll see if we can send you one, because obviously what's going on with the company financially. So I wouldn't recommend to go for that. Sorry, Fisker.
I've driven it, and it was extremely impressive, except for the software, which didn't work. And I had one booked for a press load a few weeks ago, and that got mysteriously cancelled at the last minute. They've since emailed me, and they've gone, hey, we've got one ready for you. You can have it whenever you want. So I'm going to borrow one, and I'm going to see what it's like. I'm going to see if they fixed it. I mean, it's tempting, right? It's like 35 grand for a massive range, hyper-fast, amazingly good-looking electric SUV. I suspect the company won't exist in a year's time. So what happens when it needs looking after? What happens when it needs servicing? I don't know. What happens if the screen stops working one day? I'm not sure. You'd have to swallow a big old brave pill.
The only thing I would say is look at it as battery storage.
I was just going to say the same thing.
So look at it as battery storage. So whatever you're willing to pay for the battery, if worst case scenario it's an unusable car, and you just sell it as spares, then work out what a second-hand battery would be worth, and that's your worst-case scenario.
Are we going to explode in 10 seconds, this little thing down there?
Let's see. We've got 6 seconds left. Anyone got a quick question? Hello there.
So most car manufacturers now offer electric variations. Why aren't motorbike manufacturers following this trend?
That's an excellent question. I got my bike licence this year, and I'm obsessed with them now, and I'm a bit frustrated by the lack of electric bikes as well. My guess is that one of the main reasons is that a lot of bikes are pure pleasure vehicles, right? They're weekend toys, and if you love riding motorcycles, the chances are you enjoy the clutch and the gearbox and the vibrations and the whole experience. We are seeing a growing scene for electric commuter bikes, electric mopeds, that kind of thing. In terms of zooming around town, you don't want the clutch and the gears, you want silent and efficient and clean. So those have arrived already. As far as electric bikes, they're miles behind, right? In terms of the legacy brands, there's essentially no offerings whatsoever. So I think they need a bit of kick up the arse, really. Surprisingly, Harley Davidson, one of the first brands to offer some really interesting electric bikes under their Livewire sub-brand. Who'd have thought it? Anyway, there we go. We didn't explode. That's good. Guys, this has been a delight. I really hope it was useful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a question that you didn't get the chance to answer, come have a chat with us on the side of the stage. Otherwise, have a lovely day. Thank you.
So there you go. So if you fancy more of Everything Electric, then they are doing Everything Electric or Fully Charged South down at Farnborough, and that is the 11th to the 13th of October, and I'll put a link in the description below where you can buy tickets. But that's the sort of thing, it's not just EVs, it's things like renewables, nothing to do with dogs, although life is a lot richer when you've got a dog, especially one like Monty. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click and all that malarkey. I'd appreciate it, and see you next time. So bye, Monty.
Bye, Monty.